Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Family First. I'm your host, Eva Andrade, and I'm here with Brad and Esther McDaniel from Harvest Family Life Ministries. And we're going to be talking about the kids right here in the state of Hawaii and the foster care system, and an audit that was done by the Department of Human Services that said that in 2022, 2,322 children spent some or all of that year in foster care, including 964 children who entered foster care and 1,033 children who exited. So, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Let's talk about the audit and stay tuned because you're going to want to hear what's happening right here in the state of Hawaii and our children in Hawaii. Welcome to the show, Brad and Esther.
Hello, aloha. Thanks for having us.
I had to have you because you guys are the experts in the field. And when I say that, it's because you guys have been working in the foster care system and helping parents that are navigating this foster care system for how many years?
Oh, I think, the first time we had NIDE and we had power of attorney for our nephew was in 1995.
Wow.
So that was one of my sister's sons. So, but the first time we were licensed for foster care by the state was in, I think, 2003.
Mm-hmm. So that's what's interesting about having you on the show is not only are you parents that have navigated the system yourself, you run a ministry now that helps people that are moving through the system as well. And so we're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about this wonderful audit that I know, Brad, you have read probably 900 times. And I'm sure as they were talking about it on the news, I haven't seen a lot on the news about this audit. Have you?
No.
Does that surprise you?
Not at all.
Not at all. Well, we're going to talk about it, but we want to make it clear that in the discussion today that we are not attacking anybody who does this work from the state all the way down to the organizations that the state partners with, because we know, you guys know from experience, and I know from just reading that any organization that steps up to help these kids, it's tough work.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard work, and in the child welfare field, the reality is majority, if not all, of those agencies, both state and private, are understaffed. Social workers are underpaid. Morale is low. And so it's tough. And it's tough in our system that we're living in right now in our society. Many people don't want to work anymore. That's one of our things that we're living with now. So the understaffed situation is making things worse rather than making progress in the audit and things like that.
And they do address that in the audit. But Esther, I want to start with you because the numbers that I talked about in the beginning that are in this report, what does all of this mean? Because if somebody driving and listening to this right now, or they're watching, they're thinking, okay, 2,322 kids, right, in the system, in the pot. And then you have kids coming in, and then you have kids going out. So tell us what that means. And do you agree with these numbers?
We should be very concerned. This is local kids. This is Keiki Oka'aina. This is our kuleana. It's not another state. This is happening right here in our islands. We're probably related, right, to so many of these children that are coming in. What it also is it's a bittersweet thing. That means if someone's children entered foster care, there are parents who are hurting, who are struggling, whether that's domestic violence, whether that's substance abuse, mental health issues, whatever the situation. It's rough, right? And the loss that they're feeling, that as makua, as the parents, or the loss that the children are feeling, like, I don't know where my mom and dad are they okay? And where am I going to go? All of that is like, it sounds so bleak. But we know that we have hope in Jesus. And just as you were saying, we don't want to disparage anybody with this audit, but clearly the audit is showing that our state, with our keiki, that's our greatest asset, if you want to say. The future is here now. These children that are here now. They aren't just leaders in the future. They're actually leaders today. They are this generation. and what's happening to them, and so that's why I think the audit was important. It did show, there's like not good stuff happening, but what can we do next? We all can come together and help.
I love that. And you make a really good point. Here in Hawaii, we do things a little different on a lot of things, but on this, we do family different here in Hawaii, right? So when we're talking about foster kids, you had mentioned before we started recording that a lot of families here the kids are placed with grandma or auntie or what, because of the Hanai system, right? So does that play a role in how the system works?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things that they talked about specifically in the audit was like child specific or provisional license, and that there were issues with that, people completing that process. But on the mainland or across the nation, when you're talking about relative foster care, so they use this term kinship care. Like here, right? We say, oh, that's my ohana. They went hanai me, or however. It's like, and ohana here can also mean maybe it's a neighbor down the street,
brought us friends, uncles, cousins,
niece.
Calabash family, whatever. That it's not. We're not necessarily just talking about blood relatives,
right?
So those are the people who can step up, or even legal parents can say, "Oh, if you're gonna take my son into foster care, I like him go to Uncle Bill over there." What you still actually as parents have a right to say who could be considered to foster your children should they enter foster care. And that's a key component because children are familiar with these relatives or these Hanai family or Calabash family. And, we want to be all on the same page of helping their parents to get healthy and whole enough to be reunified. That's the goal, right? We're trying to keep our families together, strengthen our families. But if that doesn't happen, if parents don't get better, or for some reason or other, they actually agree to okay, I think somebody else should parent them. Now, we still need people to step up to the plate and become resource caregivers, or also known as foster parents.
Good. Okay, so viewers and listeners, I want you to be paying attention because this is also going to have a call to action at the end, right? We're going to talk about that. But you bring up a good point that now I want to turn this over to you. So when you meet a family who's interested, right, in serving in the foster care system, what are the steps that you take?
Okay. I want to answer that, but I also want to add one thing. We talked about the kinship care in the mainland, or the ohana here, that the large number of what was talked about in the audit in terms of provisional licensed families, majority of those families are ohana. So this is somebody that the family knew, the child knew, so the familiarity, the comfort level, it does not decrease the trauma of being removed from your mom and dad or whoever the parents may be. But it does help when there's a familiar relative there. So I just wanted to, kind of address that. That's important. Good. And so there's a very needed place that provisional licensing covers. So that.
So, and after you answer the steps, we want to come back to that because I'm telling you, half of the people listening have no idea what does this licensing thing mean. So we should kind of walk them through that. But so what is the steps? What is the process?
So the first thing, and normally when we meet families, it's when we're speaking in churches out there. And so that's a plug. I'm going to look right at one of the cameras, I'm not sure which one, and say churches, churchgoers, pastors, church leaders, if we have not been in your church ever or for a long time, we need to be in your church because this is our kuleana. This
Action
is the church's job.
Action step one.
Body of Christ needs to take these kids in, and so we need to speak with you. So please reach out to us.
And if your pastor hasn't talked about this at all, then that is a number one reason for you to reach out to Harvest Family Life Ministry and your pastor and connect, because I'm telling you, everybody listening and viewing right now knows somebody who has a kid who's in the system, or they know someone who's taking care of a kid, or like, as you guys know, I took care of my grandson who could have ended up in the system, but I stepped in. So everybody knows somebody. So this is an important thing.
So we meet a family who says, hey, I've thought about foster care. I'm not sure I can do it, but I'd like to serve the foster care system, the children, the families, in one way or another. And the first thing we'll do is, we call it an in-service, pre-service, home visit. And we'll spend as many hours as is needed to talk through what this looks like, what foster care looks like, the options of various ways to serve the foster care system. And in that time, we're kind of assessing with this family, where do they fit? Where do they fit in this? And that's, I say that, and then I want to turn it over here to go through to my wife to go through that. But because this, again, looking directly at the camera and giving the action step, not everybody is called to do foster care, but everyone who is a follower of Christ is called to care for the children, for the orphans, and these are our modern day orphans.
You know what came into mind as you're talking about that, and Esther, get ready to come to your answer. But I was imagining, you know, those olds in World War II, they had those motorcycles that had the driver and then they had the little seat on there. So there are some people that are in the driver's seat. They're the ones that are actually taking in the kids and they're prepared. The rest of us might be in that whatever they called that seat, because we come alongside and we help, whether it's support, whether it's just being there for them. It could be respite, right? It could be providing kala, right? I mean, sometimes there's money needed. So I just thought of that. I'm sorry. That's how my mind rolls.
That's good. And that's important because, again, we all have a part. And if the church were to step up and people start serving those who are caring for the children, if we did that like we're equipped to do, because we're a family, the church is Ohana, if we did that, then all of a sudden all of these families who are struggling, who know that God has called them and they feel isolated, they feel alone.
And they're probably going through, sometimes the kids are not easy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So they could just be having mental breakdowns sometimes, right? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off, but
okay.
That's what the point you're making, right?
The whole point is then these families will feel supported. They'll know they're not alone.
Yeah.
They'll know that what the Bible says is actually happening now.
Yeah.
Because they'll feel the support and the love and being walked through life with those around them. So that's so important to understand.
And for our viewers and listeners, you want to stay tuned to our show next week as well, because we're going to be talking about ministry in Hawaii and churches and what we're called to do. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation. So this is a plug for our next show. But Esther, you were your husband wanted you to fill in that thought, or are we at the point? And I was like, what was I going to say?
No, actually, I want to make two things really clear, and I think it would be helpful for the audience, and I think it's helpful for the community. One, Harvest Family Life Hawaii, we are not a church. We are a 501c3 organization that works with churches. We engage churches to help and support keiki that are in foster care. So we serve before, during, and beyond foster care, the children in the system and all of their caregivers, and can be extended family as well as even like social workers and attorneys, other social service providers that we encounter through the system. The second thing I want to clarify is we do not do foster care licensing. We are not a licensing agency. What we do tell people nowadays more than ever, it is so helpful to have a navigator while you're going through licensing. Where licensing lies, that's all under the state's purview. They're the ones who issue the license. They do use a contractor, which currently is Catholic Charities, to do a lot of the paperwork and what you would see as like, oh, where's my application? All of that stuff is online, and all of that gets uploaded, and it's handled by Catholic Charities until it's turned over to the state. But our role at Harvest is helping somebody, walking through the steps with them. We get so many questions. Where do I go for my TB? Where do I go for my fingerprinting? Is it an actual fingerprinting with ink? No, it's actually at a cell phone place, possibly, where you're going to go and have this done. I'm just saying there's so many questions. Some people will say, do I have to have X, Y, and Z in my house before they come? Like, there's a lot of questions because it's really unknown territory to the average citizen. And I think all of us need to get better educated about what's going on in our foster care system.
That is a perfect segue to understanding the audit, right? Because you've got a family, they go through, you sit down with them, you go through the thing, they have to work with the state to go through the licensing. So let's talk about the different levels of licensing.
Oh, wow. So
Options that we give to families as we talk through everything.
And so, of course, we talk about the general license, which basically is what we hope more people will do and more people will talk about and not be afraid of, which means that you would be fully licensed by the state to receive children into your home, youth under the age of 18 into your home who are in foster care, and temporarily caring for them until they hopefully can get reunified to go back to their original ohana.
What are they looking for in the licensing process?
Well, and sometimes people ask me, do you have to be married?
Yeah.
Single people can foster. You don't have to actually be married. Space, of course, is the primary consideration aside from a safe, loving, nurturing home that has the ability to care for children. And that's why you have like a physical form that your doctor needs to fill out to just verify that, hey, this person can actually provide care of a child. Space, though, would be that they do need a bed, their own bed to sleep in, their own space to keep their clothing, like a dresser. And so sometimes children may share with another child. But of course, it's boys and girls and girls together. Yeah. And then infants, it's a little bit different. It's like babies that are like 12 months and under can actually be, like in a bedside bassinet. But once they get to be a year old, then they need to have their own space for that. But I think there's a myth that you have to be like this super parent or really wealthy
that we had
or
super
something. Like
parents
there's
in the world
so
today.
many things that I think people feel like they're not qualified.
Yeah.
Don't discount yourself.
Well, and I think it's a good point to also say that through this process, so they're a good person, they're a good potential applicant, right? They get so far and maybe they need a little help with making their house ready. You guys step in and you help them get over those little hurdles, right? And I'm assuming, because I believe in a very strong, powerful Jesus, that even big hurdles you can help people overcome, right?
Yes.
So people should not be afraid of the licensing process. So when the audit talks about the difference between provisional licensing and all of that, what are they referring to?
Do you want to talk about the provisional?
Sure. When we meet with the family, again, we talk through kind of where they're at, and more often than not, they're ready to do the general licensing, and so they start the process. And again, we walk as close with them or as far away from them as they want. That's what we always say. That's our offer.
So you're
to
not
families.
stalking them once they
I
come
am
to your
not.
place.
No, in
you
fact,
don't
you know what?
call them every day 20 times.
If I shoot them a text and they don't answer, they may not hear from me until they answer. We don't have time to stalk. Okay, that's just the reality. So, but then there are those families who may say, I'm not really sure. Not sure we want to start the general licensing, and maybe we can do respite. And respite care is anything longer than 24 hours of babysitting. That's legalese. There you go, legal jargon. But and so they may say, and this will work for our family. We could take, doesn't matter the gender, maybe ages 3 to 7. We could do respite, and we could do for a week, 2 weeks, whatever the need may be. And the need for respite care across the state is huge because we no longer have a respite budget, I think is the way to say it, or a respite unit.
I think everybody listening and viewing are like, I need respite too.
Yeah.
I think the world needs respite right now. We're in the middle of an election. Everybody hates each
Our
other.
kids are adults and we need respite.
But we're talking about people who have stepped up to help these kids in the system, and definitely do they need respite.
So that's an option that they may go into as respite. Then what will happen too sometimes with those families, and this is the reality right now, there are very few or zero open general licensed homes, depending on what day it is of the week, right? And so we'll get calls from social workers that we've worked with for years from the state saying, hey, we're going to be removing, or we have these kids or this child, and they give us information, not confidential information, but age, gender, and we need help finding a home. We don't have any homes that these kids can go to. And so we may, if one of those families who had considered foster care, but they're not ready to start the general licensing, we may call them. If it was kind of a match in their age group, we think this, and this is all, I say we think, this is prayerfully covered, believe me. We pray a lot about, Lord, what is the home you have for this child or these children? So we'll call a family and say, hey, can you pray about this? We always tell them, give us a day. We give you a day, pray about it. Just see if you think this is something you want to consider. This is not, we don't have any authority in that. But if they call us back or we call them and they say, yeah, this is, we want to know more, then we'll call the social worker and say, we have a possible family. We've done the pre-service in-home visit that we do. And the social workers that we've worked with for a long time know how prepared those families are because of that, the work that we're doing with them. They know that we have a support system in place through churches that will help walk with this family. So then the social worker has, again, it's their call. Are we going to call this family, maybe do a provisional license? And what that would look like, the reason that the provisional license is there, this child needs to be placed. They can't be sleeping in the state office, which we have kids sleeping in state offices. We have teenagers sleeping in hotel rooms with the social worker in an adjoining room. That kind of stuff is going on, and it shouldn't happen. These kids need to be in a family home.
So that brings me we're talking into 2 action steps.
There you go.
Number 1, churches need to plug in with Harvest Family Life Ministry. And why? For a lot of reasons. But how many times have I gotten a text from you guys saying, we've got a situation, we need a family to step up? Churches, in my own personal opinion, there should be no child that has no place to go.
That's right.
As long as there are Christians in this state that are serving the living God, there should be a place to put these kids, right?
Agreed.
So that's number 1. Number 2, it's so important that we stay plugged into what's happening with the audit, because the audit called attention to some problems that was happening because of this. And we are in a unique place to help, right?
Yes.
As a church.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Not only plugging in with you guys to know what else can people do?
So on the child provisional, if that happens, the social worker calls that family, and social worker will then do a home visit and meet the family and look at the home to make sure this is a good place. They'll run a background check right up. That's the first thing they'll do. But then all the rest of the licensing that needs to be done will be done after they place the child. That's why it's called a child specific or provisional.
Because the child needs to be put somewhere,
needs to
right?
be put
So
there.
that they're not sleeping in a hotel room.
And we can't take 3,
or
4,
whatever,
5,
right?
6 months to get this family licensed.
And sometimes it's more than one kid, right?
Yes.
Sometimes there
Yeah.
are siblings,
Yeah.
right? So
And then they're supposed to do all of that licensing, and that's where the audit covered this, and we've talked about it already. Catholic Charities has the contract right now to do that provisional licensing, to get the fingerprints done, to do the home study, all the things that come with that. The audit spoke to that not getting completed
Right.
too often. I don't know what the numbers are, but it was way too often. 1 is too many, but hundreds is way too many.
okay, I am not in it as you guys are. When I read the audit, and I've read it 3 times now, it seemed to me like there was a lot of ball dropping. It wasn't just and it didn't seem to me like there was intent behind it either.
Sure.
It just seemed like, there's all these kids in the system. There's all the steps that need to do. There are organizations that are rising up to help in the different pieces. And I think that rather than getting to the point now, because everybody's freaked out because the audit was not good, right? So everybody's biting each other. There's all this internal fighting when actually this is a perfect time for everybody to work together.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
This is, in the military, we're taught that you have to, when you're going to war, you got to know your enemy. You got to know your territory. You don't just arm everybody and then go and say, shoot up the place, right? You've got to do studies. And the audit, in my mind, is that study. It's here's what we're facing, and it's an opportunity for people to step up. Now, maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I want to stay with the military analogy, and then you can address to that. When you go to war, the Navy is not saying, the American Navy is not saying the American Army is our enemy. The American Army is not saying the Marines are our enemy. The Marines are not saying the Coast Guard is, and on and on and on. And unfortunately, some of the responses already to the audit have been, let's blame each other.
Yeah.
When, like you said, we 100% believe that the response to the audit is, let's all work together to do better. So,
Absolutely. I've actually, and I guess I can just say it right here. Wouldn't that be something amazing if they were to call upon us, not just Harvest, but others in the churches, to help these families get through these steps? Maybe somebody needs a ride or needs just some attention to get through some of these steps that to complete their license. We're willing to consider that, or at least talk story about that. But I've said it in public meetings. There was community listening meetings that were put forth by the Malama Ohana Working Group. That I'm not sure if the audit actually had referred to them or not, but that is a working group that is talking about ways to improve child welfare. And I have said in the community meetings, at least 2 that I attended, I said, please consider child welfare partnering and collaborating with organizations like mine that are grassroots, community-led. It's not just my organization. I don't have a piece of the pie. We privately fundraise. It is not taxpayers' dollars. And we have high accountability because majority of our donors we know personally.
Well, and we're
not going to want to fail them.
And Christian ministries are accountable to God.
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
Everything we do. So
much
even if we
small,
skate
higher
through,
level of accountability.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. And dare I say that maybe, just maybe, the government should back off a little bit on the way they attack faith-based organizations who want to partner. Too many times do I see faith-based organizations that want to step up and help, and they're told, no, unless you don't do Christian things. And the government really has a lot to gain if they partner with Christian organizations and Muslim organizations and Islamic organizations.
Absolutely. Faith, yeah.
Because we're talking about faith, and people do what they do in ministry because of their faith.
And I know we're kind of winding down, so I think this is a great place to go with that. I think it's important for our listeners to know that we at Harvest, and you just said it for Hawaii Family Forum, we believe in religious freedom.
Yes, we do.
And we don't call it Christian freedom.
That's right. Let's be honest. Now, we want everybody to be Christian.
Right,
Of course we do, right?
And
that's
I'm a Christian pastor, but I believe in religious freedom, and that goes for all religions because we all fall under the same category. If we're not going to have freedom, then that means we're going to be persecuted against. And it's one or none. You know what I mean? It's all of us or nobody. So yes. I think that's important. And I would just say that when, first of all, you said that the government, our state child welfare services, we have partnered with them for almost 20 years now in various forms. And I believe with all my heart that we and they have done a good job of navigating that line of separation of church and state in the way it was meant to be, and that's a whole nother show. Which
will be next week, so everybody needs to stay tuned for next week.
But we can help churches to be able to work with the state, just as we have helped the state to be able to work with churches. And it's not on a big level. Right now, it's because the social workers who know us and have worked with us, we continue to work together. And I think the biggest thing is to make sure that that doesn't end, but continues to grow.
All right. So as we end right now, we're going to put on the bottom of the screen the website for Harvest Family Life Ministry, but say it for those that are listening. How do people find Harvest Family Life Ministry?
Online, it's hflhi.org.
All right. And for the rest of you, make sure you stay tuned for next week because Pastor Brad and Esther, they don't know what I'm going to be showing on the screen behind. So you want to see them thinking off the cuff. Like this video, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you know every time we upload a new video. And we will see you all next week. Love you. Mahalo.